As was introduced, my name is Molemo Moiloa, and I am co-founder of a project that has been running since 2020 called the Open Restitution Africa Project. And we are a pan-African collaboration amongst a number of practitioners across the African continent to develop restitution process data and to share this across particularly Africans across the continent working in the sphere of restitution. The work that we do is really focused on the capacity to share skills, strategies, and information across museum professionals, activists, community representatives across Africa, with the intention of enabling greater knowledge and a kind of collective good practice around how restitution is done. So quite differently from some of the presentations you've heard and will be hearing, we're not specifically focused on any particular belongings or artifacts or objects, as you may call them. And we're not specifically focused on provenance, so how a specific belonging has come to any museum. Instead, we're particularly interested in how Africans have established a process of identifying where their belongings are, getting in touch with who might have them, and beginning the negotiation process of having them returned. And what that process is, what it involves, who it involves, and how it might be best undertaken. So that's really the information that we're sharing, and that's the good practice we're interested in developing. The thing I just want to start with before I present our project to you is to emphasize, I'm sure many of you would know that the context of restitution in the African continent is particularly urgent and vital on the basis of just how much has been taken from the continent. Reputable researchers have found that in sub-Saharan Africa, it's up to 90% of material heritage is outside of the continent. And any of you could imagine that if in your country you only had 10% of your heritage, how much would be missing? Because of this, it's really, really important to understand that return, so the movement of a belonging from one part of the world to another, or the return of human beings from one part of the world to another, is not the be-all and end-all. Instead, the true purpose of restitution is to repair, to some degree, what has been lost. And that repair is really focused on knowledge repair, reintroduction into children's curriculums at school, connecting with histories that are unknown. This repair is primarily up to the people within country, right? Once something is returned, then the work truly begins. And it's with this in mind and the long process of what repair really looks like and how complex it is for communities that have been so foundationally damaged by colonialism and other forms of violence, that the work of what it means to skill people, to give them the knowledge of how to do the work of repair of their communities is fundamental. And so that's what really I will be presenting to you as a first step in trying to kind of work towards that action. So our project has, as I said, run since 2020, and we have been providing micro grants to researchers across the African continent to establish a knowledge base that's specifically interested in how restitution is happening. And the idea here is to develop best practice based on an understanding of how many different ways restitution is happening in Africa. And what we have recently launched just at the end of March, so you are some of the first to connect with this, is the open data platform that seeks to share this information. So we have developed data points, specific kinds of information that we think is important to collect and share on restitution process. And we've shared that through this open data platform and have begun a process of facilitating what we call socialization of this data. So working with our network of incredible practitioners, museum professionals, activists across the continent to ensure that this data becomes part of how people are thinking about restitution. So I'm going to give you a quick walk through the platform, but it's open and accessible to anyone to really use and explore and help inform the way restitution is working. And I won't go through all the details, but we'll give you a bit of a picture. So as I say, our researchers across the continent have developed narratives of the journeys of restitution. So really working through 25 different cases from the beginning of a particular case all the way through to the present moment. And of course, in most cases, the beginning of a restitution case starts in the moment that it is taken from its community. And then there are a number of other moments in a restitution case. And this is really what we try to track. And this visualization just gives you a sense of what it means to travel through the many moments of undertaking a restitution process. You will note a kind of calendar here that in large part we're trying to track moments of history over 200 years. And these different points are things like media discussions in a country, initial demands for the return of certain histories, initial communal processes that are undertaken to try and begin restitution processes. And in our research, some of what we've identified is that for many communities, there's no understanding of where their history actually is, and therefore an inability to even place their demands with the right people. And in some cases, this has taken up to 100 years to identify, and of course, in many cases, has not been identified as yet. A number of the cases are also post the 1970 convention. So we have sort of historical, mostly colonial period restitution cases, and then we have some newer ones that, as you can see, often because of the discussions we've been having now, the support of Interpol, etc., you see how much faster some of this history has been returned, whereas many others are a long process of negotiation for return, and in some cases address many other needs beyond just return. You'll see that each case where it might end with a certain return continues with the dotted line because, as I said, so much of what is important in restitution is not simply the return, but the continued work that then happens locally in the African continent. While this visual is more of a representation of the many case studies, of the many events and issues that we tried to cover, we then have many other parts of the platform that seek to share this information in various other ways. So one can click on any particular case and learn more about that case in the sense that we have quite a lot of detail. So we could continue here, but I will share it through a slightly different angle, which is that the 25 case studies are all available here on the data platform. We have a filter tool that provides access to the various case studies. And partially how we think about this tool, colloquially we call it case studies like mine. So if I'm an African who's involved in a restitution case in my context or wishes to take on a restitution case of my community, I might come here and I might think about how have others who are dealing with similar kinds of issues, how have they done it? So I might, for example, consider a case study that is from a return from another part of Africa, because this is happening more and more, for example. I might specifically be interested in digital kinds of restitution. We have cases, for example, of restitutions of sound archives. And I might specifically be interested in the ways in which diaspora has been involved. So, for example, perhaps the belonging that I am interested in is based in Germany and is particularly what would be called human remains. And then we have one case study that's specific to that is from Tanzania. Alternatively, it might specifically be from the United Kingdom. I might be generally interested in case studies that are related to the United Kingdom, and then I can run through the various case studies that are here and can determine the various requirements that might help me understand my particular case study. Each case study is then detailed in a lot of information. This isn't even all the data that we have, and we will be releasing all the data as an open data set that researchers and data scientists might continue to work with, and that will be part of our socialization process. But there's various kinds of information that is available about each case study that can be read through and engaged with. We also have a general overview of some of the key questions about restitution across the African continent, and thinking about the ways in which people are framing restitution cases in their contexts. This can be searched by the various different case studies, or it can be looked at in general. And what you see here is what are the kinds of expectations Africans have of their particular case studies. What is important to them? What are they looking to achieve? We have a kind of reduced version of that timeline I showed you right in the beginning. We also have some really important information that seeks to identify what are the primary impacts on negotiation processes. What are the kinds of issues that are most impacting people's capacity to engage with a particular topic. This graph, I think, is a really important one in that it talks to the kinds of resources Africans are using for restitution processes. And what you see here is that the primary resource that is being used by Africans in restitution is human resources. One very vital, important reason here is because Africans are not, by and large, being provided with other kinds of resources in the way that, for example, museums in the global north are provided with new funds, new staff members to do provenance research, etc. In large part, the ways in which this is provided to Africans is through a particular European museum where there might be a shared budget. But outside of that, it's quite difficult for African museum professionals, communities to really source funds to inform their negotiation processes, to help them identify where something is to grow their team. And so in large part, people are really dependent on often unpaid labor and the commitment of human beings to making this work happen. And here is a graph that plots a range of different people who are involved in various case studies and gives you a bit of a picture of the complexity of a restitution case, just the numbers of people who get involved in a particular restitution case. We also track the kinds of skills and capacities they have. Some of what we found in our research is that that often in restitution, when a group is very small, it tends to be less successful. And when a group increases its network, its collaborations, its range of skills or expertise, restitution processes tend to happen faster. And these are the kinds of things we've been able to learn from our data. The last thing I will show you of the platform before stopping is that we have developed a tool that is an AI-supported tool where someone might be able to query our data set. And here we've added our full data set. So our studies on digital restitution, our studies on the way in which restitution is communicated in the media, our studies on inventory programs for restitution, all of this information, our guides for undertaking restitution processes, all of this information is available within this tool. Importantly, the way that we've designed this tool is that it never gives you a final answer. So unlike the many chat tools in AI available online, this tool will never tell you this is the way to do a certain thing, or this is the final way that something might be undertaken. Rather, it gives you a range of knowledge from the data set and then further reading to undertake. And the reason we've structured it this way is because we truly feel that in this kind of early phase of African heritage restitution, we don't yet have a final best practice, right? We're still in the process of developing that. As each country develops protocols, frameworks, policies, guidelines, this is being finalized and formed. But in the meantime, we are dependent on really learning from the patterns of practitioners to identify possibilities of undertaking this work. Each case study is so incredibly different from another. And each case study is responsive to the specificities of that context. For example, whether a country is demanding return from a former colonizer or a different country, whether the community has localized difficulties and battles, or whether there's relative unity in that community. All these dynamics affect how restitution is done, and we feel that the best possible strategy for developing best practice is to try and make this information as transparent and accessible as possible. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moiloa, for highlighting what an open access to information and knowledge can do, and also for such an excellent use of technology in this process. So we will continue now.